Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Moving into the Future. Today, I am joined by Thomas Anderson and Gray Hart from Richmond Commercial Services based out of Virginia, our OMA partner in the area. Thomas and Gray are a couple young guns in the industry, as is RCS as a whole, very young company within OMA. So I'm excited to talk to them today, get their perspective on things, see where the industry's going, how they've gotten their start in the industry. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it.
Good to be here. No, it's exciting. I've known Gray pretty well now for a couple months, probably about 6 months. And Thomas, I'm just getting to know you, but it's exciting to talk to a couple of young gentlemen in the industry, working hard to get their start. So many people I've talked to on this podcast, and Thomas will talk a little bit about it, have been more seasoned in the industry. So to get your perspectives on how it's gone for you so far and what you've seen, that's worked well for you is exciting. So Thomas, why don't we start with you? How'd you get your start in the industry? Because as far as a young person, you're doing pretty well for yourself and have established yourself. So how'd you get started, in the beginning?
It's a good question. So I started out, going way back, 6 or 7 years old. You start in T-ball, and just some background on this because we got to start there. I remember, there's like a tryout, in T-ball, to pick what team you're on, and so there's this kid that shows up, and he's wearing, Yankee hat, Yankees jersey, Yankees socks. If they had like Yankees cleats, he probably would have had them, but he didn't at the time. So my dad was the head coach, and, we're running laps in the morning, and, this guy comes up to my dad. He has a Yankees hat too. And he goes, what are we going to do? How's this tryout going to go? Are we going to throw? Are we going to hit? What's the deal? And he goes, is your son, the kid wearing the Yankees jersey? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, well, your son's going to run laps the whole time while the rest of us, get to play and do all that other fun stuff. Long story short, that was my dad and Vince Barano talking, 6, 7 years old. And, my dad turns to him and he goes, you're going to be my assistant coach. I need help here. 9, 10 different teams later, multiple championships, probably 300 wins, 10 losses. And that's not exaggerating, games later. College comes around. He coached all my teams, football, baseball. If he could have coached swimming, he probably would have, but he was too busy. I mean, he was at Office Movers at the time, which if you know anything about, the DC, moving history, they were kind of the big guys at the time. It was Office Movers. And so college comes around. They weren't my coaches anymore. I didn't make it to the league, unfortunately, although I thought I would, but I fell short. And, so your junior year of college, you have to do an internship. And so I figured, what do I do? Who do I know? My dad was a sales guy for, he still is sales manager for 30 years. Didn't want to do what he did, kind of wanted to figure it out on my own. So I reached out to Vince and I said, I heard about this JK moving thing. No idea what it is. See your trucks around town. Sounds kind of cool. Can I intern with you? And he was, very courteous and gracious and gave me my first opportunity as an intern. And then, I got 4 or 5 years later, here I am still in the industry, went from intern and then eventually was on their sales team for a little while. And, still talk to a lot of those guys today. I didn't realize what I was stepping into at the time. I was like, oh, it's just a moving company. It's just, I see their trucks around town. And little did I know they were, the largest privately owned moving company in the United States. And, have some of the biggest hitters on their team. I know Rocco likes to, call them the Harlem Globetrotters of moving, if you will. And to this day, I still use a lot of those guys as resources, call them regularly, consider some of them friends, and, look up to a lot of those guys, and they still help me, behind the scenes a little bit if I ever need it. And that's how, kind of a brief synopsis of how I got here today.
That's awesome, man. I got some follow-up questions for that, but Ray, why don't you tell us how you got in the industry?
Mine's completely different. Started off with a household. Started off just running stairs at the University of Virginia. So my freshman year, right when I got to school, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do for some side cash. And one of the fifth years on the team was like, yeah, I work for Bellhops. It was like, they had a couple locations on the East Coast, I think, at the time. And he was like, yeah, I worked for him for last summer. Like, the service was just kind of, I think we can do it a little bit better. So like the whole wrestling team at UVA just started hustling and bustling. And we just started from, just doing U-Hauls. We'd pick up U-Hauls, we'd pick up trucks. We were just doing like labor side of things. And then one year after another, just kept growing. I ended up getting a better opportunity at another firm to be a partner there. And we grew that. And then I learned the whole interstate game. And that was a whole step up. Went from doing college apartments and student housing to trucks all over the country, coordinating, stacking jobs, and then doing, bigger size homes. We went from doing a 3-bedroom apartment to a 4,500 square foot house. And I was like, all right, there's a little bit more to this game than just running apartments. And then I ended up, everybody was just like, hey, you keep going, keep jumping levels in this game. Like you gotta meet this Alec guy. And I was both from the same schools, went to the same high school and college. Alec played on the football team at UVA. I wrestled at UVA, and just kept, it was kind of like a figure eight. People just kept saying, I'm telling you, man, like you gotta, even my dad was like, I've heard good things all about him. Like they moved VMI, Virginia Military Institute, the whole library. And I was like, all right, maybe I need to take this a little step farther, and got in touch with Alec and Harrison, and pretty much just like went out to eat. And I was like, dude, let's see what we can do. So then jumped in the commercial world, like head first. Big fan, big fan. Getting away from just doing household all the time and doing a little bit higher tier, not just doing household, doing logistics, warehousing, to huge, building relocations, which is a whole different ball game. And I was like, this is right up my alley. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's interesting too, because myself included, I had a couple jobs after college, just like trying to figure it out. My dad was really on my ass to get a job pretty quickly. So I just kind of took what I could get at first. But I wound up, eventually, I think it was like my third job, after doing like insurance and then like media ad sales, I ended up in moving. And just one of those industries you get in and you never leave, and you work your way up. Whether it's doing those household moves to start in those 3-bedroom apartments, like you said, Gray, and then eventually it leads to, for me in Manhattan, it was the luxury apartments and luxury, moves in that realm. And then from there you get to commercial. And once you hit commercial and you get, you got your legs under you a little bit too, as far as understanding how the trucks, how the manpower, how those things work, it becomes a lot easier to envision the, success that you can have in those industries. So it really works out. And that's really cool. I didn't realize that you had started in college like Alec as well. And then just kind of had always been circling around each other, but never fully had met until you ended up at RCS. It's been like, what for you, like about a year so far, or
not even.
Yeah.
It's been like 6 to 8 months,
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
then Thomas, as far as you just got to RCS, but speaking about the guys over at JK, I've had Vince on the podcast. He's a great guy. Knows a lot. I've also had Brian Martin and Jim Stevens. I think I've had Brad on too, on the podcast, and they're all products of the JK Vince Barano pipeline. Were you working with those guys as well when you were over there? Certainly Vince, but like was Brad and Brian and Jim over there when you were over there?
Oh yeah, so that it's interesting you mentioned that. When I first interned I started as kind of a marketing guy because that was my degree. And then they eventually paired me up with Jim Stevens and Rocco Balsamo. And I go, this is it. This is, they wanted me to try a little bit of marketing, try a little bit of sales. I knew in the back of my head, I always wanted to do sales. But, once I started going on walkthroughs with Jim, going on walkthroughs with Rocco, that completely changed my outlook on, the industry as a whole, not only watching them produce at a very high level, but also having fun with it. And, just the relationships they'd built, what they were doing. I was like, this is what I want to do. And then fast forward, JK is huge on training, extensive training. So they paired me up with Cody Ryder my first 3 months. And I did 5 to 7 walkthroughs a week with him, just walking, meeting, pricing. And then they're extremely, the way they like to train people is just high intensity, high rep, high intensity. And weekly we'd have a meeting with Brian, Brad, Rocco, Cody, you name it. And they'd be like, well, if we got, this big of a, warehouse or office and, we're moving this many people, what should your price be at? And then it was very, the intensity was very high. So yeah, so I worked with all those guys. Eventually I started working with, more Brad and Paul, who passed away. And yeah, they kind of inspired me to, do what I want to do, what I do now, and, produce at a very high level.
When you said they were having fun with it, what exactly were they were doing that you thought was fun?
I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble here. But, just, employee, like lunches with clients, the stuff that people don't necessarily talk about, just, driving around, joking around, it's not always, people know what we're here to do. So a lot of times, we have a personal relationship with a lot of our clients. So just kind of the interactions, kind of just pushing each other, making fun of each other a little bit, all, good-hearted fun. But just a lot of that made the day go by quicker. It was more enjoyable. It wasn't so much, X's and O's, you're doing this. It was, every day was different. Every day was unique. You never knew it was going to happen. And, just making sure, like a quote of Rocco, he's like, what's the most important thing of the day? And you're like, I don't know, like the move or, getting the pricing out, or, and he's like, no, it's what's for lunch. And it's just like stuff like that, it's just, they're funny. They're really funny guys. And, this is a hard industry. And if you don't have a sense of humor, you're not going to make it very far. All of those guys, if there's one trait I can say about them, they're all funny. Yeah. So, that's a big thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Having that sense of humor, and then like Gray, kind of getting back to you, this is an industry you started in, doing this with your wrestling buddies. And again, I could imagine it's a pain in the ass a lot of times, during the summer and residential moving, you're hauling shit all over the place, and it can be heavy, it's whether you're packing boxes, it can be monotonous. And you got to have fun while you're doing it. So Thomas, that certainly makes sense. But Gray, you've kind of just made the jump to commercial. It's interesting when you make that transition, and there is another learning curve that goes on with it. And again, like we were talking, I mentioned before, you have the understanding of trucks and manpower and that sort of thing. But what's been your biggest adjustment hopping in, or I guess learning curve hopping in the commercial world that you've really focused on or have tried to get better at, since making that jump?
Yeah, I've seen, the commercial world's more of like, you're going to get a PO where it's going to be a flat rate quote, what's your number? So when you dive into that, you can't always be hedged by a T&M. You can't just go to rely on that hourly quote. So you got to attack the quote from multiple angles. There's a lot more that goes into it, a lot more factors. I think I'm just I've been working alongside Harrison and Alec day in, day out, and they've really, helped me out with transitioning.
Yeah. What's it like working for those guys, huh? Because I only know them from like the OMA conferences and stuff like that. So, what's it like actually working for them?
Always sprinting, hustle and bustle every single day. There's no, you work, everybody's like, oh, work-life balance. But I mean, we work You know, you want to be really good at something, probably working 7 days a week. You know,
Yeah.
somewhat.
And to Gray's point, I mean, like you said, just always working. And like something that really differentiates Harrison and Alec is, you know, they're involved with every part of the process. They're owners, and, you know, they're there to help with the sale. You know, they're managing guys on the ground. They're coordinating projects. You know, they're ops managers, and they don't necessarily have to. We have the staff. They want to be hands-on. I've seen Harrison unload a truck with a forklift 4 or 5 times while fielding sales calls, while getting the USPS guy from the door. Well, like they're wearing so many hats. Not that they have to, like they want to. They want to make sure there's quality at every part of the process. And that's something that, you know, for me, just in my short time with them so far, is it really differentiates them from other owners I've worked with in the past. They're not sitting at their house. They're here working every day. And if you call them at 10 o'clock at night, they're going to pick up. It's awesome for me.
Yeah, I think what's really telling about both of them is they've understand the opportunity that they have as business owners in this industry, and you know, growth opportunities to really build out significant companies in the Virginia area. And you guys just got office space in Northern Virginia, which is huge, you know, to be a little closer to DC and markets like that, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we're located here in Lorton. I'm here right now. We just got 75,000 square feet of warehouse space, which is filling up in what feels like overnight. I took a picture of it a month ago. It was half full, and now it's like, you know, shooting up. And we have 15 guys per day building racking. And then we also have 120 truckloads coming in, trailers from one of our biggest clients. So we're busy here, and we are actually in negotiation to get the rest of the building to expand to 150,000 square feet, which we thought would have taken 6 to 12 months. But with, you know, the rate we're growing, we're looking to do it in maybe 3. So we are in a very fast growth period right now.
Yeah. And like, Gray, what's it been like for you as far as, I mean, you said you've been there 6 to 8 months. You know, what type of growth have you seen in that time?
Astronomical growth. I mean, like the whole office, I'm primarily in Richmond and Charlottesville most of the time, but I make it up to DC, you know, probably once every 3 weeks. We didn't have the Lorton warehouse. We didn't have the Charlottesville branch. I think we've added about another 10 trucks. Staying super busy. We've added a ton of different employees, CFO, HR, different people on the business development team. I mean, it just continues to turn, you know. We just got to keep the pace.
Yep. That's really exciting.
And that was a big thing for me. I mean, you know, growth, being with a, you know, rapid growth company that's not, you know, the average profit margin for a company is around, you know, 10%. I'm not going to speak on ours, but we're growing extremely fast at exponential rates, and, you know, we're doing things right. And I wanted to be a part of one of those teams early. So that's why I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. And that's something that's really benefited me at the advanced group too. You know, when I got here 3 years ago, I didn't even comprehend, like we were a well-established, you know, company already, as far as you mentioned some of those people that come on, CFO, HR. We had a lot of those established departments already in terms of like client services, which is huge. Our operations department has really done a lot. KJ Kennedy, who's come on a couple of times, he took over as COO and really refined our operations and project management teams, which has been a huge improvement since I've started here up until now. But then you look at that expansion into other markets, you know, even though you guys are in Virginia and expanding just to Northern Virginia, that's still a huge expansion. We've gotten into Florida, and that's, you know, opened up massive opportunities for us, both on the commercial and residential side of the businesses. So it's really, and what's interesting too is, as young people or younger people in the industry, like, you know, we're not going anywhere. You know, we just talked about how much we like being in this industry and being part of these growth businesses. So there's still so much on the horizon, and like that's what makes it exciting. And I think delving back to Alec and Harrison, That's why they work so hard, again, because they understand we're doing something right. We're filling these warehouses up. What type of work are you filling it up with? Is it education mostly? I think you guys do a lot of that, right?
Yes, we actually have half our warehouse dedicated to FF&E right now, which is another thing I hadn't done a lot of in the past. We're huge on hotels, receive, deliver, install. Also, healthcare, hotels. So that's about half our warehouse. Then the other half is just dedicated to commercial. It's a commercial swing space, if you will. So offices, standard stuff. But that's another thing. I haven't been in a warehouse personally, except Flood Brothers. I've been down there and I've seen their warehouse. They have an FF&E section. But besides Flood Brothers, I don't personally really know anybody else out there who has a whole half of their warehouse dedicated to FF&E type projects.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, especially in that area, that's a hot industry. So that's really great. Good for you guys. I wanted to see too. So again, you guys are kind of getting the taste of OMA. Great. You've been to a couple, seminars and stuff like that. And OMA is another good example as far as like a booming business, and a business like within a 5-year timeline that's made significant growth and improvement, and has raised the level of the industry as a whole because of all its partners to operate at a higher level. Great. What's it been like for you so far? Because again, you were mentioning before, you had known this business for so long of just like hustling, residential moves and growing from the 3-bedroom apartment to the large household moves, and then getting into the interstate world. How has it been on the commercial side, not only understanding the commercial world, but getting into the national accounts aspect of it?
Yeah, it's just a little bit cleaner, a little bit more professional. It doesn't require as much time. You don't have to, the brick and mortar aspect isn't live by the sword, die by the sword. You can go to professional vetted companies that have been doing it for a very long time at a very high level. And, everything is a risk reward in anything you do. And that's what it takes to get to the next level. So by using your OMA partners, that's essentially what it takes to get to that next step. I've only done a few commercial ones, just starting with diving into doing a lot of household with the M3 guys, doing a bunch of interstate with them right now. But yeah, I've just been like kind of a filler on Harrison's projects with it, and it's that the opportunity costs and like the time that you can save by going to that network is pretty wild.
Yeah, and for you again, you've been at the company 6 to 8 months. I mean, you really do. The fact that you're even doing some of these moves now is pretty impressive. And again, the fact that you can take that time to learn about it and just understand it more, it opens up your whole world. I mean, for so long, the industry was just dedicated to your local market, and it's been like that, in companies really. Or I should say in markets, like New York, major markets, San Francisco, LA, DC, even then the smaller markets too, second markets. There's so many companies that are just dedicated to those markets. But the fact that you've gotten in, and if your world's already been opened up to the national accounts portion of it and what can happen there, that's a huge understanding to have earlier in your career. And that's going to help you a lot along the way. Thomas, when you were at JK, had that national account business been opened up to you early, or were you more focused on, the local commercial moving? What can you give us your timeline? Because again, you've also worked for a competitor, so you understand national accounts certainly, but now more so being on the OMA side, what's it been like for you as far as that growth goes over your career?
Yeah, so to go back a little bit. I've always been a huge fan of OMA, and the first out-of-market job I ever did when I was at JK was with Advanced Group.
Oh, nice.
And I remember I got a lead. I think it was in Brooklyn. I reached out to Matt Ford, who's been a big partner of mine. He's been great. And he sends me back a proposal for a decom. It's like $140,000. And I'm like, whoa, this sounds good. I thought this was going to be like a $5,000, move or something. And I remember Matt kind of walking through it, and he's like, we got this, and I was very wary because on a project of that size, you want to be there, you want to check on it, you want to shake the guy's hand, and to have that level of trust where Matt knocked it out of the park. And it was a quick time, like a deadline, like they had to be out like that Friday, and they moved us that, they reached out to us Monday, and Matt came in, crushed it. And you guys just, did a really, really good job, which, all the OMA partners are strong, but a big reason, I wanted to come on this podcast is, Advanced Group is my favorite partner.
We appreciate you saying that. And, Matty Ford, shout out Matty Ford. He is a rock star. So, that's nice of you to say, but that is the standard that not just the Advanced Group abides by, but all the OMA partners abide by, especially on those bigger jobs for those, really any account. But, when you have that opportunity to come through for a partner and their client, all the OMA partners want to rise to the occasion and show why they were, allowed into the group in the first place and, became a part of this network, because this is the type of opportunities we want. And when we get those opportunities, we're going to come through in spades and, do a great job as an extension of our partners in the different markets. And you mentioned too, as far as national accounts and selling national accounts, when you have the confidence that these jobs can get done in these different markets, regardless of the complexity or size or any other variables, it makes it easier to sell, and that your confidence is raised so that you can sell easier to clients, knowing that regardless of what you need, we'll get it back. You mentioned Cody Ryder earlier today. He's at M3 with Jim Stevens in Phoenix. But, I had a client out there who had a bit of a complex job. It was a lot of variables at play, and it wasn't huge by any means, but just a lot of moving parts. And, those guys get it done easy, clients happy. And I had no doubts from start to finish. I know those guys personally, obviously. So, I know they're going to come through, but it's those type of relationships and that trust that goes a long way. And I think that's why the OMA network and the OMA brand and what OMA's built over the course of the last 5 years is so exponentially better than anything else out there. And, a lot of these companies try to sell on the fact that, all these companies are actually different companies. It really doesn't matter at all, because again, we're all abiding to the same standards. We're all vetted, by the same levels and criteria. So it works out well. And I think as far as the industry develops and grows, and I want to get your guys' opinions on this, since you've been doing it, since I like having like the younger perspective and people who they came in at a certain point and they've seen it up until now, where the industry is going. So, Gray, being so new to the industry, I think it's really nice to get your opinion on it, because, and I say industry as far as commercial, because I think people who have done it for so long, their opinions can be skewed a little bit, or their experiences in the past can skew their opinion, I should say. So, someone's so new at it, where do you see the future of this industry going? In the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity, especially with where you're seeing things with the economy coming out of COVID. The moving industry and contracting industry as a whole is, it's incredibly hard to find labor right now. Everybody's having a hard time with that. And if you can kind of push through some of those challenges and work through some of that, I think there's going to be exponential growth for anyone that's in those spheres. It's definitely a difficult thing to conquer. Everybody's like looking at one another. What's the solution? What's the solution? You kind of got to walk. You got to go. You got to look through the box and figure it out a little bit. But I think in terms of like the labor industry as a whole, it's not going anywhere. It's always going to be here, and I think kind of the sky's the limit with this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And Thomas, we'll get to that, but I just kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit as far as the labor industry as a whole, because I think I saw Goldman Sachs yesterday put out a report like 300 million jobs are going to be affected by AI in the next 10 years. And one of the things that was actually said at a recent OMA conference was for kids in like middle school right now, 50% of all jobs that they'll have when they graduate from college don't even exist yet. But you look at something like the moving industry, which is one of the oldest industries of all time. When you really think about it, trucking as a whole and transportation of goods has been going on since the start of the agricultural revolution, really. And when you think of it like that and what we do for our industry, there might be slight changes in terms of technology, which is well needed, because I think there's a lot of ways the transportation and logistics industry is lagging in that sense. But if you look at what we do, what we sell is we sell labor, and we sell a process and, how things are done. So that's never going to leave, and you're not going to be able to mimic that with an AI. So we're safe. And I think the labor industry as a whole is safe. Now, do I think, robotics and that type of technology could play a key in some way, shape, or form? I do, specifically when it comes to warehousing, it kind of already exists. There's different tools you can use in warehousing that may eliminate some warehouse workers and people like that. But still, nonetheless, there's always going to be some level of labor that's necessary to transport goods, one way or another. So that's an interesting concept. Thomas, what do you think on your end as far as, the industry in the next 3 to 5, even 10 years?
So that's a good question. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of folks who have been in this game for a really long time. And I think on one of your older podcasts, Brian said, Brian Martin, that, we're kind of getting away from when a law firm was moving, that was like a 7-figure deal.
Yeah.
Like, because they were moving everything. What I'm seeing is a lot more, IT moves, a lot more just crates, peripherals, things like that. So I think the key for us moving forward, or at least the industry as a whole, is to differentiate your services, e-cycling. Gray's been doing some flooring stuff.
There you go.
Have a whole slew of additional services. But I read an article recently, I can't remember who posted it, but it said 50% of Fortune 500 companies will be reducing their footprint over the next 5 years, I think. I'm not positive on that. But what I think is there's going to be a lot more decommissions, a lot more, crate moves, a lot more, contents. So as a whole, it's shrinking a little bit, but you kind of just have to pivot. And so I think, disconnect, reconnect, like I said, e-cycling, decommissions, being able to provide all those services, I think is very important, because it's still a huge industry. And I'm not sure. I think my mom read a book one time and she told me that she was reading about movers in Pompeii, like before,
Right.
before trucks.
That's what I mean.
So
that's what I mean. Yeah, agricultural revolution type stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think the industry is not going anywhere. You just kind of have to pivot. And I think just focus on your craft. And I think that's how I kind of see the industry progressing.
Yeah, and I agree with you there too. And then you bring up another interesting concept or thought as far as, okay, these Fortune 500 companies are reducing their footprint, you said by 50%?
Yes.
Yeah. So then how is that space going to be repurposed? What's it going to be used for? Again, there's still going to have to be goods that go into these spaces. They're not just going to sit there. So whether there was an article in the Times about a month ago, or probably before that, I'm not exactly sure. I might have just saw it a month ago. But essentially what's going on in New York City right now is the amount of available space that's available could fill up 26 Empire State Buildings. So that's a massive amount of commercial office space. How is that going to be repurposed in the future? Is it going to be, more for higher education or education in general? Will it be for life sciences, which is a very popular industry right now? The arts and culture. How are we going to rezone buildings so that are they going to be more multi-use, rather than fully commercial buildings? Will you see 50% of floors being residential and 50% commercial. All of these things, they offer a lot of unique perspective. What's important for us as young professionals who are going to be in this industry for the next 20 some odd years is to stay flexible within that, and you mentioned the IT portion, that's a huge aspect of it, but, also the handling, and you mentioned it with hospitality and FF&E, that type of work too, and being very diverse in your offerings, I think is going to be key. And that's one of the things that we excel at. We have a distinct advantage at the Advanced Group over our competitors in New York specifically. We have an entire technology services division that does a litany of things within IT, not just the disconnect, reconnect, but also security, low voltage, design and builds, and all of those things, with data centers and stuff like that. So to have that level of flexibility in the services you can offer, combined with national accounts and doing work all over the globe and mimicking that work across the country and the globe is huge. So yeah, I think it's all very interesting. But boys, this was a real good conversation today. I appreciate you having it. I was hoping maybe next time we do this, it could be in person. I was hoping the first time we could do this, it could be in person, but it was tough to line it up. Next time we do it, we'll make sure we do it in person, and maybe we'll talk about some success stories we've had working together that we can promote. But gentlemen, it was a real pleasure. Thank you both, and looking forward to the next time.